Business Growth Talks podcast is created and hosted by Mark Hayward. In this show, we talk about how to grow a business in the growth stage. The growth stage is often marked by rapid developments, increased revenue, and an escalating customer base. In each episode, we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners who have grown businesses, and we cover topics like scaling processes, market expansion, financial management, human resource and talent development, and customer retention. If you are looking for actionable advice, tips, and techniques on how to grow, run and build your business, this is the podcast for you.
Welcome to another episode of Business Growth Talks. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to Brandon Neely, a seasoned entrepreneur and financial expert. Brandon is a profit-first and bank-on-yourself professional and the co-host of Wealth Wisdom Financial podcast alongside his wife, Amanda. Together they share valuable insights drawn from their decade-long experience managing Overflow, Coffee Bar, L3C, and their current venture in financial consulting. Brandon and Amanda specialize in creating personalized financial strategies for individuals and businesses, focusing on the profit first system and infinite banking framework. Join us as Brandon shares his journey, the lessons learned, and practical advice to help you achieve financial stability and growth. Hello, Brandon. How are you today?
Hey, Mark. I'm glad to be here.
Such a pleasure to speak to you. I'm really looking forward to it today. You've had some different experiences and different businesses, so it's going to be nice to explore that before we get into your current venture now. But the first question I ask all of my guests is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Yeah, you ever heard of the lady Carol Dweck? There's a growth mindset and then the fixed mindset. I feel like a business mindset is more of a growth mindset. Sometimes we can have, as a business owner, we are, I need to do it this way or that way. But as a business owner, we aren't a W-2 person, right? We are a little different. And we're like, sometimes we're a little idealistic. Sometimes we think we can change the world real fast. But oftentimes I think a business mindset is a growth mindset of saying, how can I turn a little into more? Does that make sense? That's something.
That's a great answer. It's a great answer.
Yep.
And I 100% agree. I've talked many a time on social media, on my show, about that growth mindset and how important it is to be able to grow businesses. And I sometimes describe myself as a pragmatic optimist. Because I don't think I'm naive, but I always try and see the best in these situations. But you have to be pragmatic with it as well, because you do need the optimism to keep going even when it's hard. But you equally, you have to be able to understand the realities of the world and the function of business. So what would, if I don't often ask this, I've never asked this question, what would you say if you could sum up, this is a hard question, sum up yourself in a sort of 2 or 3 word? What would you like? I've thought about this before, so I've got an advantage. But so the pragmatic optimist is what I came up with. How would you, your characteristics, how would you describe yourself?
And that's different as a business, but what the business is maybe characterized as to who I am personally, right? And then I'm also married. So I would say my wife is the optimist. If you say the optimist point of view, I'm the realist, I would say.
Really?
But also visionary. If you think of rocket fuel from the EOS world, I'm more of an entrepreneurial activator, realist nowadays, and hopeful at the same time. I want to change the world. That's me personally, is that why I'm in the finance world, is world changer, right? Whether it's a
personal. How are you going to change the world then, Brandon?
Yeah, our coffee shop name was Overflow. It starts with the one. And if we can change the one person, I think about with our financials, and I don't know how impactful I will be on some people. The leading cause of divorce and breakup or any of that is usually money. And I'm like, I possibly parents stay together because of the work that we done together. Businesses are successful because they understand their numbers. And so it's for me, I think it's those choose your own adventure. I don't know what the alternate will be for some of my clients if they didn't meet with me, but I do know because they have a good roadmap, maybe they're still married, right? And you know what I mean? Like those are powerful things.
It's incredibly powerful, and it always upsets me that it's over 50% of marriages fail now these days, and it always, it's always a very sad thing, divorce and the splitting up with kids with the family and things like that. So I think it's an amazing plan to change the world with one person at a time. I think that's a great methodology to go with.
And that was our old business name, and I think that some of it, activist, world changer, it's the same for me personally, regardless of what business I am in. So I just happen to be less optimistic than my wife.
It's interesting because I'm the optimist in our relationship, and my wife is the pragmatist, the realist, the person. I come up with ideas, and she's always, "How are you going to achieve that?" I'm like, "I will sit down." And I've been with her 20 years and married 15 years, and I now, when I get excited about an idea, I always stop, think, what would she say? Even before I even speak to her about it, I think, what would she say to counterbalance the optimism or the excitement that I have with a new idea? As an entrepreneur, for me, I'm constantly finding ideas and things that additional revenue streams, additional services that we on our current businesses that we run, and I'm always thinking about the next opportunity. So
have you ever read the book Rocket Fuel?
No, I've read Tractions from EOS, isn't it?
Yeah. So Gino Wickman wrote another book, Rocket Fuel, and he says that there's the visionary and then there's the integrator, right? And it sounds like your wife is more of an integrator and you're more of a visionary. That's probably in most businesses. There's a visionary and an integrator in most places, or they're missing one of those pieces.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on. Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
Shoot, I was born, both me and my wife were born very poor. And for me, I was born single mom who had multiple marriages. But my mom was also a salesperson. She would go door to door selling aerial pictures of people's houses.
Oh, right.
I would go with her in the summer times and that learned about how to do this stuff. We'd listen to those. You ever heard of those cassette tapes? Those little things? Yeah. And we would listen to audio self-help. I forget who is Zig Ziglar. I think his name was
Zig Ziglar. Yeah, amazing.
We listened to his videos, and I think that has still led into it. However, we were still poor. I think now I have a 5-year-old, and I'm like, man, this kid's been on more trips than I have, and I'm like, this is amazing. I just got to teach him how to be a good steward, and wealth is not just money; it's time, it's all kinds of other things.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about trips because I grew up in a working class family. We always took holidays in the UK. So my first flight was, I was 17 years old. I went with my friends to, it was a Magaluf or something like that. It was a terrible sort of teenage party island and whatever. But it was interesting. Like, my kids are 8 and 10, and they've taken more holidays abroad. And now we don't always drive. We drive sometimes. We don't always fly, depending on where we're going. But they've been abroad like so many more times than I did, and it's hard to. Their reality is different to my reality, so I find it's always like they've got this viewpoint that going to France, Italy, Greece, or whatever in the summer is quite normal. And it's like sometimes when I talk to them about me as a younger person and things like that, technology is another thing as well. When they say they can't believe I had my first phone at 18 years old, they're like, what? No, seriously. Like, I went to university and my mum was like, oh, I suppose you should get a mobile phone now. It's always an interesting, the perspective of, and it'll be the same in another 20 years, 30 years, 40 years when they've got their kids, and they'll be, whether it's AI or VR or whatever that they're using, that the kids won't be able to perceive it. It's an interesting thought exercise of what you had as a child and what they have now
Or
as young
experiences.
children. Yeah.
I never saw snow until I was like 14. And I'm like, now he lives in the north and that happens regularly. But it's just something that I'm like, I told somebody I'd never seen it. And so it was
Mm.
my mom's old boss. And he, really? Oh, let's pay for a trip for you guys to see snow. And I was like,
Oh,
that
so
must
nice.
that's awesome. That was a great experience. That was like, oh, this guy is a business owner. He was able to pay for two little kids to go see snow for the first time.
Right.
That was a powerful thing.
That's amazing. All right, let's talk about Overflow Coffee Bar that you started in 2010. So why did you start a coffee bar? And I know the community side of it was very important to you, but
Mm-hmm.
what made you start the business as a coffee shop owner?
Yeah, so going back to my three words of world changer or the justice idea is one is community building that cheers environment. I grew up in New Orleans, so I wanted to like have know your neighbor kind of thing, but also ethical economics. We learned that coffee was the second most widely traded commodity in the world.
Right.
Americans the number one consumer, and the poorest countries were coffee growing countries. And I was like, hey, somebody needs to do something about that. That's what led me into when you hear those things, typically, whether it's
Yeah.
God, a higher power, or something, I don't know, whatever it is. If you hear somebody needs to do something, usually it's you. And so we're like,
Mm.
oh, we should start a coffee shop. And then that overflow came into percolating, if you will, in
Right.
2008. And then we eventually opened in 2011. But it was the worst time to start a coffee shop after a great recession.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were optimistic, idealistic people that thought it's going to be perfect up and to the right. I'm glad we
Did
were
your
naive.
business used to be called Grandma's Wealth Wisdom?
Our business was our coffee, or our financial firm was that. Yeah.
That's really interesting because I had this flashback when I was researching you, thinking there's familiarity here with this story, and I searched for you on
Yeah.
my direct my shows, but I actually interviewed your wife that
Oh,
was
nice.
released on the 19th of September 2022. So
Oh, there you
that's
go. See.
why I've got such familiarity with your
Yeah.
story. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, but I assume, is Amanda still doing shows herself?
Oh yeah, yeah, she does. She's just we divide and conquer. We're both pretty good. We and this is part of as we go in business, we evolve. My core words are the same, but as I moved in from coffee to uh, finance of all things, we weren't very confident. And that's right. Who are we to do financial services? We aren't very smart. We just owned a coffee shop. So our name, we were like, oh, but we're good marketers. And our tagline on that business, and still doing DBA with our new business, or it's the same business, but
Right.
we were like, oh, sometimes intelligence skips a generation. Grandma's wealth wisdom. That sounds awesome. That's really fun. But we learned that we are really good at what we do. We don't need to depend on, but we transitioned and said, no, we actually are pretty confident and good at what we do. So we dropped
Yeah.
grandma. She's still there in our heads. It was Howard from Big Bang Theory, Howard's mom. That's
Yeah.
the thoughts in our marketing of you want to hear her saying, yeah, you should, but some people have bad grandmas. So
Yes. Okay.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, business enthusiasts, ready to boost your entrepreneurial journey? Tune in to the Growth Gear Podcast with Tim Jordan, presented by Carbon 6. Tim dives into cutting-edge business growth strategies and new brand insights. Whether you're a startup founder or a seasoned exec, gain the tools to elevate your business. Subscribe to the Growth Gear with Tim Jordan on your favorite podcast platform. Shift into high gear. The Growth Gear is your guide to fast-paced business success.
That's so interesting. I didn't realize she'd been on my show. That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm looking at the show notes. I can see that it was all about an arts community studio that you turned into a coffee shop, and it was all about building the community
yeah.
around the coffee shop, which is just what a lovely idea to have. Now, I cannot remember for the other interview. Did you sell the business,
We
or
did.
does it still? You did.
We did. It's still going to this day. We just,
No.
I do not own it, and I sold it pre-pandemic and started this one. So I'm like, that was amazing timing. And ultimately, the reason we sold it was because there was a point. This was, I don't remember what year this was. We started 2017, 2018. We had a flood. Literally, the roof was off for some maintenance, and a freak storm happened, and it rained.
Oh, no.
And the reason we sold is because my wife, at that point, we did not know at the time, as we're wading through water. And luckily, we used our life insurance policies, which I'll get into in a little bit, to overcome the flood. And we're able to sell the business and not close it because of, now at the time, we did not realize we were expecting. We found out a month later that my wife was pregnant. And we're like, oh, she's pregnant. The store collapsed. We have to rebuild it. And we're caretakers. And maybe we should make a pivot. And so we had decided to, as we got it back up and running, to sell it. And we sold it. And then we're like, what do we do now? My wife said, what you need to do is, I'm 7 months pregnant. You need to go get a job because no one's going to hire a pregnant lady. And so I ended up interviewing with my mentor now. And he said, no, you're too entrepreneurial. I can't hire you. And I was like, what the heck? I keep sending people your way. It seems obvious. But he's like, later, he came to me a month later and he's, I have an idea. How about you and your wife start your own agency and I'll coach you? I was like, that sounds better. And so that's where Grandma's Wealth Wisdom was born, out of that transition.
Okay. And are you still in contact with your mentor now?
Oh, yeah. We talk regularly. And I think that I owe like some of our, like from our former business to be able to sell it to what's happening with our current business to him and to a lot of our clients because of that introduction. We're like, we need to do more of this.
So tell me, who do you serve with Wealth Wisdom Financial? Who are your clients? Who are the people that you serve?
Yeah, I think, again, business owners. I am Profit First certified. So as we were talking about off of in the green room here, was the Profit First system can work whether you're US based or not, doing the different bank accounts and making sure that you run a profitable business. Doesn't matter where you're at, profit is still profit and percentages are still percentages. I can speak to a lot of those things and be able to see whether it's a euro or a dollar, it doesn't matter. However, I do a lot with this thing called infinite banking, which is properly designed life insurance. And that's my specialty. And that is primarily in the States. And then there's a lot of misinformation out there by Dave Ramsey and the sorts that are like, yeah, but this is this way and that. I'm like, not everything is as it seems. And there's a lot of shady people out there, both on the financial services, wealth accumulation, Wall Street side, and on the life insurance side. For me, I want to serve our clients and make sure that the policies we build, whether it's life insurance or the system with Profit First, is a foundational thing that they can pivot and use. Because as we learn, things happen in life and business, but we want to be able to overcome those things. And that's why we wrote our book and how we to serve everybody. I think ultimately our book can be used for anybody, but right.
So let's touch on Dave Ramsey. So I've got a particular view on Dave Ramsey. His whole idea that debt is a terrible thing. I'm a landlord. I'm an owner of properties, and I know leveraging debt is incredibly great way of being able to grow the business. What's your views on Dave Ramsey and other people of his ilk, that their views on debt and financial management?
I think it depends on the debt, right? So whenever you're just putting everybody into one box and saying all of this, and this is why if you talk to a financial professional and they just give you blanket answers, the answer is it depends, right? If you're in credit card debt and spending like a drunken sailor, then that is, you need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
If you understand how numbers work and you have a good system in place of having that properly managed, it can be good. But however, some business owners don't know how that works either. And they're like, yes, I'm just going to, I have all this and I have 100 properties, but they aren't cash flowing because their interest rates on whatever is stupid. And I'm like, no, you got to understand how to read P&Ls, those kind of things, because it's not one way or the other. It is complicated, but leveraging debt, this is why banks are the most profitable business in the world. They own nothing, you know what I mean? Like, and control everything.
Yeah.
Don't do what the banks tell you to do, what the banks do. Why does the interest rates change here in the US anyway? And you're like, wait, the banks just won during COVID. The banks won with inflation. The banks won this way or that way. I'm like, they got a bailout in 2008? Like, seriously?
Yeah.
So we just have to learn how to be good stewards. And every business owner that I talk about, when they say, oh, I just know how to make money, I'm like, no, you need to know how to control that. And don't just hire a CFO or a bookkeeper. Understand how to read that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And profitability is much more important than revenue.
Yes.
That it seems like a simple thing,
Yep.
but how many people misunderstand that and just chase the revenue, even if they're losing all of their money? What's been your experience with when you've been talking to people, and do they have aha moments when you talk to them and share your experience and your expertise?
We do podcasts on YouTube, right? You know that when you click or say, oh, I just interviewed a 7-figure business or 8-figure business or whatever, 9-figure business, people look at the top line revenue and say they're successful. Oh, I just made all of that. And I'm like, that gets clicks. However, it's making money and keeping money is two different things. And so I've talked to people. I'm like, wait, you have made how much for Amazon as a reseller? And oh yeah, I'm this. I'm like, how much did you keep?
Yeah.
How much was yours? And they're like, let's not talk. I'm like, no, how much is yours? Because ultimately what you are doing is you've now created a less than minimum wage job for yourself in hopes that you could eventually sell it. No one's going to buy that business if you're not even paying yourself. And so being aware of that and profit, owners pay, building those buckets, that's what brings us sellable business. I think about that in our agency.
I've got a question for you, Brandon. Sorry to cut across you. It's just something that's coming to mind. I have people on my show that are often in tech. It doesn't have to be, but often in tech, that go through various seed rounds of generating money to be able. And we've had people on the show that have had multiple rounds of funding, and they're still not profitable yet. And one of my pet hates is when someone gets funding and everyone's cheering, and it's no, that's just the start of your journey. That's not your success. But how do you, when you're helping people, like I'm imagining from what you've said to me and what you've talked about, is that you're working with non-tech company business owners that are trying to grow their business organically or bootstrapping because they don't have the opportunity or the interest of going through funding. Is that a fair reflection on the people that you're working with?
Because I also think Uber and all those, I'm like, we look at Uber and say, ooh, look at that. That's the best place to go. I'm like, they are not a profitable business. And even our economy, I'm like, all of this is fake. It's not real. And we're just taking one from the other. And you think about some of that came up with Shark Tank, right? Let's just do this and that. I'm like, do you realize they're not just doing it for fun? They are charging you money for their thing, right? And so then we don't hear, oh, that tech thing failed, right? How many of them made it or didn't, right? Oh, we just went bankrupt and we did all this and that. I'm like, that seems a bit crazy because we're addicted to easy. sometimes. So I don't know. Some of it, I'm like, I can't speak to some of this insanity, but that's the world we're in.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. So how has Profit First helped you as a business owner, as a financial expert when you're talking to people? How has it helped you build your business?
We'll be back after a quick break.
When you think about propaganda, you probably think about Kim Jong-un and his funny little haircut. And you'd be exactly right. The podcast, This Is Propaganda, doesn't want you to believe that. They want you to question the ads you see, the news you read, the brands you love. What they don't want you to question is that they are advertisers themselves, peddling the same tricks they claim you fall for to make a living. If you need something to boycott, look no further than this show. Don't listen to This Is Propaganda.
Yeah, I think it helps in building priorities. As I do even financial analysis, and I could lead to my book too, but it's about saying, what are my goals? What do we want to accomplish? And making sure that, one, as the owner, I'm paying myself. Because most businesses, they fall on two different camps. They never pay themselves, and eventually they'll pay themselves. That's one. Or they overpay themselves and they're like, yeah, it's just in the business and let's just use a credit card and who cares? And eventually taxes will come and they have no idea that they owe thousands of dollars in taxes or billions. And so it helped me to be able to say, okay, I know that I was profitable and I can take that profit and not have any, remorse on taking that out of the business. Because honestly, if we look at Wall Street, we want dividends, right? We want a return on our investment. We will say that all day, every day, but yet we won't take it from our own business. And I'm like, isn't that more important?
But there is an element of, especially in the first couple of years of starting a business, you have to reinvest everything in. So to be able to get to that point where then you can take dividends out, like as stocks or shares or real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me about an example, because I find this unfathomable to understand. But what about those companies that take out too much? So they are profitable, but they're taking out a salary or a year, like a salary, which is beyond beyond what is actually realistic for their business. Because we talk about people not taking enough out and reinvesting into business, but I want to flip it on the other side. Those guys that you meet, that you're talking to, that actually take too much out, what's the conversation you have with them?
It depends on the business, right? We're looking at the big guys and the big companies and say, oh, let's do stock buybacks and let's do all this other craziness. And they think they're going to be them and they're not. And sometimes I'm like, you know what, in order to make a business that lasts longer, you need to put yourself on a salary or something, especially if you're like me in a high commission world. So I just give myself a salary consistent. And then as the owner's pay bucket goes up, I'll increase my salary. But I don't just say, oh, I made 100,000 this month, I'm going to take and go buy a car. I think that is ridiculous. And so that's part of living within our means. And most people are just like, our Instagram lifestyle is, let's take a picture with a jet and show us we're successful.
Yeah. Terrible, I think, isn't it?
Some of that is stupid. But I also think wealth is not just revenue. Wealth is time with family. There's so much more to that than was able to buy this and show this on, I don't know, whatever. And I think that's where I don't probably make as much, and that's okay because I'm not defining wealth. And I have a financial firm on money about wealth, right? And people will think, yeah, but it's all about money. I'm like, no, that's actually one of the less.
The time I get to spend with my kids being an entrepreneur versus my corporate career for 14 years where I never saw them, it means so much more, especially young kids as well. It means so much more to them as well as you to be around and be available and be present. So time is one thing that you can never get back, especially with kids, in my view. So tell me about the life insurance. That's another area that you work on. So tell me about who you serve, how you help people there.
Yeah. So before I get into that, I do want to bring up the book, and the book that I mentioned. And this is like where then I maybe would implement the life insurance in some buckets. So as we built this idea of profit first, we said most people haven't actually made a plan, right?
Yeah.
They're just in chaos. Yeah. Whether, and I don't know how your tax code works, but ours is crazy. And it's confusion, haphazard, anxious, overwhelming, and stressful, right? That's chaos. Yeah. And what we need to do is say, okay, as a business owner, what I think about is, okay, what do I want to be in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years? So you have to set your sights. Then you have to track your in and out, inspect your progress, look for 1%, and live deliberately. So we wrote this journal. It's an interactive money journal of doing the still method, right? Whether it's for finance or for your business. Now, I like the still method because most people's goals was to go to Disney World. Like that's what they say, right? And I'm like, really? That's all you've thought about? Now, in that, then I maybe use my policy, a life insurance policy that's properly designed, as my liquidity account, my way in which I might have an opportunity fund that I could then be saving for the future, but still have access to current me. So that's what I like about life insurance, because really I think about with insurance, and I don't know about it there in the UK, but your greatest investment and your greatest resource is you. Every person, I don't care your house, your car, your business, that is not as important as the individual who's building it. And so what I like about life insurance in essence is it's built to make it whole if something happens to you. You are the cash machine, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and so then just whole life adds a component where I can still access and use the cash value to buy things like an office or whatever.
That's amazing. What's been your biggest struggle, either professionally or personally?
I think some is understanding the systems, and my biggest struggle is probably marketing. Seriously, like everybody wants, again, we look and say flashy helicopter thing or whatever. And I think that biggest struggle is people don't want to think. We want it done for you, everything service. And that's been the hardest part for me, is you have to be a thinker if you want to run a business. You have to. And that's been the hardest part of helping people not just take Dave Ramsey's words and say, oh, yeah, he's great, but actually learn to think. And growing our podcast, YouTube, it's marketing, and it keeps changing every 5 minutes. So
no. How do you advertise or market beyond the podcast and the YouTube channel? What's your method of generating clients?
Yeah, some is like on podcasts here, like doing an interview, and then some people are like, hey, that's really good, I want to talk to him. Those things, because it's about building trust. And some is, oh, they jive with me in that regard. So podcasting is one way, maybe Facebook ads, but maybe it's public speaking, but most of it's in relationship. And if you then serve a few clients, then you get a referral because they're like, this guy changed my life. Again, some of it's a long tail thing. I don't know how it's going to end, but I work with my clients who they don't have kids, or I've had clients that their 21-year-old died and they had policies, and we were able to help them through it. He'll be a client for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Just
what's it like working with your wife? What's it like working with your wife?
We're still married. That's a great thing. What we've learned is, and this is something in priorities. You ever watch the jar thing, the jar analogy, where you put the rocks and the sand?
Yes.
And
yes.
So
it's a really So just talk us through it for the people that either haven't seen it, because you've got one jar and you put rocks in first of all, then you put stones in, and then you put sand in so you can get more in. So just tell us, what's the rocks, what's the stones, and what's the sand?
Yeah, so it's the big things, and I'm leading to my wife and working with her. But so if you just put sand into this jar, you will fill the jar with sand, and you can't put rocks in. So you have to, it's an order of priorities, right? And so this goes back into the chaos of people just saying, oh, let's do this. And so what we think is, as you prioritize your life, we also are caretakers, and we also have a 6-year-old. So working with her, what we've learned is we gotta prioritize the big rocks first. We're very disciplined. We do the same things every day, pretty much. But my son knows at 4:00, we don't talk about work, right?
Okay.
On Saturday nights, we have date night where my wife and I go out and we don't talk about work. Sundays are family day, right? And so we had to compartmentalize these things to where as we work together, where we have to, and it takes time, especially those first few years, it's a little meshed, but it's a dance, right? And we're still, again, one of our biggest rules in our house, when we had the coffee shop and we had roommates and everybody else who was there to make this happen, is communicate. Whether it's finances or money, the Still method that we did, that book, that was our financial framework that we did as business partners to talk about our money without getting in fights. And so we still have fights. Not going to say we don't, but they're controlled and we have to be for each other. So I think it's great. It's also a challenge. Sometimes you shouldn't work with your spouse. You just have to know yourself.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Are you eager to take your brand or business to the next level, but just need that extra push? I'm Brandon C. Adams, host of the Brandon C. Adams Audio Experience. As an investor, author, speaker, advisor, and 2-time Emmy Award-winning producer, I created this podcast to provide a behind-the-scenes look into the life of a successful entrepreneur while sharing the steps it took to get there. Let me provide you with the energy to take massive action and shift your mindset so you can start achieving your goals effectively. If you're ready to take action today, subscribe to the Brandon C. Adams Audio Experience. Go out there, create something great, and become unforgettable, because life is too short not to. I'm Brandon C. Adams. Here's to your success.
But it's very important having those blocks of time where you don't talk about business. I think that that's the nugget for success, is understanding at certain times you talk about the business but you don't let it consume all of your life. There are times where you're your parents, where your couple, where you're not business partners, is your success. Would you agree?
And your kids see that, right? Because my son even the other day was like, yeah, you don't talk about work with other kids around. I was like, why did we say that, or did something happen? And I was like, oh, he wants us to be talking about things that he can be a part of. I don't know, Blippi or something. Anyway.
What would you say your risk appetite is?
So I don't like to just put risk into, let's put out everything on black into, I don't know, GameStop or something like that. And I think that our market is risk versus fear. That's fear, greed is what they say on CNN Money. And we're taught to be risk, but we don't have controlled risk. So I'm a business owner. I do insurance too, but I'm very risky because I started crazy businesses, right? I use my life insurance to invest in real estate as well, note investing. I bought an office. So I think that it depends, but I risk in things that I know. I do ads, Facebook ads. That's a risk, right? Yeah. I spend money that I'm like, I hope it works. And so I don't know. I'd say I'm more conservative on things I don't know or won't do anything, but I will put a lot more on risk on especially our business.
Yeah. What do you still want to achieve? Have you got any sort of aspirations of what you want to achieve in either the business or personally?
Yeah. So one of our goals is in the next, my son is 6. The next 18 years, we want to visit 6 of the 7 continents before he's 18.
Right.
That is a defined goal. And the reason I want to do that, and we have it all mapped out, is be able to show like the world does not revolve around you or America or any of this, that there's so much more to it than that. And so those are some things I want to achieve. It's not like a big house or any of that. I think it's more about impact of people's finances. Like again, some of the stuff that I do with clients with life insurance and annuities is educating them, having businesses that thrive. Those are the things that drive us. Now, will revenue follow? Absolutely. I want to have my, what we call is our freedom number is 12. I want to be able to mentor and train 12 people that are part of our organization that are leading other people. Right? That's a big number for us. That's for my wife specific, so it might be 24 total. But I think it's a long game to be able to get
How many
there.
employees do you have?
Right now we have 5 of us total.
And how have you evolved as a leader, as a CEO, as the top of the company? Obviously, you share the responsibility with your wife, but when you're managing people, how have you evolved as a leader?
Yeah, so I remember when we had the coffee shop, I remember one of the staff almost put me into the hospital for high anxiety and blood pressure and stealing and not showing up to work. And I was like, man, this place is killing me. Fired the girl, and I got back to normal right after I fired her. Now, that was where I said, I'm never going to have staff ever again. I'm not doing this. But yet, in order to grow, I need to learn that I can only do so much, right? When it comes to servicing our clients, being on this podcast, I got to be present here to grow it. But also, there's clients stuff that happens. So I've learned to build it and then learn that I can hand it off. Or even from a sales point of view, teaching associates who are maybe 2 years behind us or 3 years behind us. This is what I did. And you can learn from me. You do, I watch you do, all that kind of stuff, to where then they end up being a mini version of me in the areas that, does that make sense? Like always be training and mentoring, discipling, whatever you want to call it. There will be people that leave you, but that doesn't mean you change. I want to help them be better people because they worked with me or became a client of mine.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question?
It did. It did answer the question really well. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. We ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. The first question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
Does everybody say marry their wife? Seriously.
Some do, yeah. Which is a good answer, especially if she's listening.
I should say that because otherwise I'll be sleeping on a couch or something. I think that for sure is a good one because we are more powerful together than separate. And I think finding that right person is important. And also deciding to stay in it, not just saying, oh, this gets hard, I'm done. Right? That's a decision, a continued decision that I keep making.
Yeah, I was reading an article earlier on in the week, and they said that let me get this right. They said that one of the successful traits of a successful business person is actually being married.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really fascinating, that whole idea, because as your words, like you're better together as a team than as individuals. But actually, I always think that my wife and my kids keep me very grounded and keep me very, it's a terrible, it's someone like cycling, and a guy, Bradley Wiggins, won the Tour de France, first Brit to ever win the Tour de France. And I love this story that he told. He was like, it was celebration. It was the best thing that British cyclists had ever achieved. And he stood up there with his son and was holding his son, and everything finished. And his son went, "Dad, I need a poo. You have to help me get to the toilet." And he said it was just such a, yeah, that's the reality of the world. Like, it doesn't matter what I've achieved as a sports person, the first thing that any Brit has ever done. But the reality is that there's still times with your children, you just have to do what you have to do. So I always think it's a very good grounding for people. Do you agree? What's the difference in your life with having children?
Yeah, some is you might go slower. Also, I believe that business is a lot like children. Having staff, I have a 6-year-old business and a 6-year-old. And what I've learned in the beginning of a business is, man, you got to wipe its butt and do all kinds of craziness, right?
Yeah.
And then as it grows, you all of a sudden have more freedom, or they become crazy. But we have to be intentional with how we are part of them. And so a lot of times in business, we say, "Oh, I want a 20-year-old." And you're like, "No, that's not how it works." Or I want a marriage. I'm like, with marriage, family, all of that, it requires those small disciplines over time, not just that one decision. It's the multiple.
Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
That's a hard one. Best piece of advice is I be disciplined. Like, I listen to Think and Grow Rich, or that's a good one. I'm reading Success Habits right now again. Is always be a learner. And the 3 things I think about is, when I tell anybody, it's know that you're called to it, because it'll get hard. That means your marriage, and you will not know 100%. If anybody tells you that you were 100% on your wife, that you had doubts. Every one of us did. Somebody's, "Oh, I never had doubts." I'm like, you aren't human then, because it will get hard. Have a team around you that care about you, not just your business or your things, and then know your numbers. And those 3 things, and those came from different people, right? Whether it's faith or various things. So those are the best Brilliant. 3 things.
Good. Next question. Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
Oh, besides my wife, my mentor, Mark Willis, who runs Not Your Average Financial podcast.
I've had Mark Willis on my show as well.
Oh, probably. Yeah. Mark's.
Yeah, I have twice. He's brilliant. He's an amazing guy.
Mark probably introduced you to Amanda, and then somehow that happened. I bet you. Mark has changed our life, and he knows how to speak. I would want to be more like him if I can, but he's done a big difference for us. So I would say him, and some people who are no longer around. But I again, listening to Napoleon Hill, I'm like, he's made a difference. I never met the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have mentors as authors and 100%. Tell me about a regret that you have.
Oh, there's probably a bunch. Some is maybe I didn't in the coffee shop. Maybe I was thinking about this as when we first started, we were like, if you build it, they will come idea. And maybe doubling down more on marketing, and not just, hey, I'm going to do a Facebook ad. But someone was asking me about this. I'm like, what you need to do is do guerrilla marketing. Go out there with flyers and just print a crap ton and just get out there and hustle in that regard. And I think that a lot of times people are just waiting for it to happen. And when it comes to sales or even podcasts, they get on a bunch of places to share your message. I wish I would have not played it so small that way, or just said, let's hope it happens.
Yeah. What are you most proud of?
Oh, I have to say my marriage. I think literally what we've accomplished. We've done a really good job, and to be able to see that my son can experience these things at a 5-year-old. Seriously, he was swimming with dolphins last month. I'm like, that is crazy. You were in Hawaii and Cancun, and it was for work, but I'm pretty proud that we were able to accomplish that. And he has no idea. I'm like, you had no idea. So I got to teach him how to be a good because we have an only child. So he inherits all of this. So I'm like, how do I teach him?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. What is your why?
I think faith is my biggest why. Like I look at the Bible and say, love God, love people, this justice thing. I'm like, yeah, the world is all jacked up. People are rude and it's crazy selfishness. I'm like, you realize if we actually thinking about even like on traffic, people try and get ahead all the time. I'm like, if you just slow down, you can get there faster actually. Mm-hmm. And my biggest why is I want to make a difference. But again, it's the overflow principle. Biggest why is their kids, family, that. Yeah. But I want to change the world. I want to make a difference and not just say we did it, but people that come back in the end and say, yeah, that person, that group, when I'm at a deathbed, they come to that part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. 100%. I totally get it. And lastly, what does legacy mean to you?
Oh, I probably led into that is I know like my son is going to get the business or somebody maybe, but maybe not. But really, I do life insurance all the time. So a lot of times people are so selfish and they're hurting themselves. But leaving it better than I came in with. And I believe, honestly, as a country and as a world, our world is all jacked up because we were like, who cares? Let's just I'll take it all and do whatever. And we're handing this next generation a bunch of crap. And I'm like, we need to pull up our big boy pants and suck it up. It's not about you, but it's about them. And how do we best change this for the better? Because they're inheriting a crap ton of suckiness right now. All of the stats are bad as far as health stats. And I'm like, how do we change that? We have to. So I want to give him a legacy at least.
Amazing. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can go to Wealth Wisdom FP, Wealth Wisdom F as in financial, P as in partners.com. If you go there there's the shop page, you can get the book. There's a audio version too, so you don't have to be in the US to get the book. And of course, go to Wealth Wisdom Financial for our podcast. We try and make it not just about life insurance. Some of that is more specific, but most of the time it's a thoughtful thought exercise when we do our podcast. It's more of positioning our hearts versus just our money.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I'm so glad I managed to connect the dots to your wife and Mark as well. But thank you so much. It's been brilliant speaking to you, and cheers.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for listening to Business Growth Talks. This podcast is released every Monday, so don't miss an episode by subscribing to all podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Have a great day.